Tithing was a demand in the Old Covenant. It went to support the priests and the Levites and the temple ministry, but also to help the poor and needy, etc. But how is it in the New Covenant? Is tithing a requirement today? And please note that I'm not trying to answer whether tithing is good or not, but whether it's a demand from God today or not. What I'm about to say might shock you, or it might go against what you have been taught. This teaching is not out there to tap any person or organization on the back. My question is simply, what is the truth? The fact is that there is not one single verse in the whole New Testament after the death and resurrection of Jesus that neither encourages us to tithe nor tells us that tithing is a demand in the New Covenant. Not one single verse. And if you study church history, you would discover that the mandatory tithing was not practiced within the early church during the time of the apostles, nor during the following first centuries of the Christian faith. In the beginning of the book of Acts, in the midst of revival, people were so grateful to God because of His grace that they sold their houses and lands and gave everything at the feet of the apostles. No one back then wanted to discuss 10% because people gave all that they had. When Jesus, before the cross, mentioned tithing, He actually criticized the scribes and Pharisees for giving tithe of vegetables, but at the same time neglecting the more weightier or important matters of the law. He said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone." By saying this, Jesus made clear that tithing was of the law. But after the cross, we are no longer under the law, and the conclusion must therefore be that we are no longer under any obligation to tithe in the New Covenant. A widespread argument for tithing in the New Covenant is that we are children of faith after Abraham. Abraham, who lived before the law, gave tithe to Melchizedek, who was an Old Testament type and shadow of Jesus. And therefore some argue we who believe in Jesus today are obligated to tithe in the New Covenant. But if we honestly study the context, we will find that Abraham gave tenth of spoils from a war. He actually gave 10% of things that didn't even belong to him in the first place. And this was a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that Abraham gave tithes to God on a regular, or to Melchizedek on a regular basis. Also, chapter 7 in Hebrews explains that there is actually a hidden symbolic message in the fact that Abraham gave tithes to Melchizedek. The first 10 verses of chapter 7 of Hebrews explains that when Abraham gave tithes to Melchizedek, it wasn't actually Abraham who did it, but Levi, who, so to speak, was present because he was in the loins of Abraham, although he was not yet born. Levi was the father of the tribe in Israel that had exclusive rights to receive tithes from the people of Israel. So in this context, Levi is a picture of the law and the Old Covenant, while Melchizedek is a picture of Jesus, who is the mediator of the new and better covenant. So the fact that Levi, through Abraham, gave tithes to Melchizedek simply means that the new covenant is greater than the old covenant. It's a simple picture just describing that. How come? Because the one who receives tithes and pronounces the blessing is more important and greater than the one who gives the tithes and receives the blessing. That Abraham once in a lifetime gave tithes to Melchizedek of things that did not even belong to him should not be interpreted as if we in the New Covenant live under an obligation to tithe regularly from what actually belongs to us. What it means is that the New Covenant is superior to the Old. And in the New Covenant, we are not living under a demand to give a certain percentage of our wealth or income. We are free to give as we purpose in our hearts on a voluntary basis. If you are tithing today out of joy, I encourage you to keep doing so. But if you are not and you feel condemned because of it or feel like a second-class Christian because of it, I want to encourage you and say, you are free. Give from a joyful, grateful, and merry heart because God loves a cheerful giver.